All right, today we pick up with Shemot, also known as Exodus, chapter 36, verse 27. Literally in English, it would say, and two sides, the T-O, not the number two. Mishkan sees, did 6 boards, or make 6 boards. Did and make are the same thing. Ule yar kete, and to the sides of, if you will. It's the hinder part or the side, the back, the rear, used of the temple, of course. Then we have Ha-Mishkan, which is, at this point, this is the temple. Mishkan is the tabernacle, the tent in the wilderness. That's the word you use for that. I noticed in a biblical translation, the Hebrew Delusion translated the English New Testament into Hebrew. I noticed that he used Mishkan instead of what we like to call the right word. Hal is the right word. But, well, 1850s, nobody around to say dude. Anyway, Mishkan is the tabernacle, so we are obviously talking about that. Something about on the two sides of that tabernacle. This is Yama, which is the word for sea. The sea, used of a lake even. Properly, it denotes the boiling, foaming of a sea. That's the image that you should get from Yama. You've heard that word, Yamasut, the reed sea. Just saying. Then it says, Asa, properly to labor, to work about anything, to make, to produce by labor, to manufacture, to fabricate. You guys have that one memorized? Yep, so we're in make it mode, or made it mode, whichever the case is. Then it says, Shisha. It's the ordinal number 6. Then we have Kerashim. Well, that's boards or planks. And yes, they could make planks back then. Like a 2x6 or a 2x12, they could make things like that. They wouldn't have been as exacting as what our boards are today, but they were pretty flat, to tell you the truth, because they found little boats and things and ships from that time. Well, what they would call a ship, we wouldn't call it a ship now, but back then they were big, But they found those, and they're in museums, and those planks are pretty flat, especially for not having the right, the kind of woodworking tools we have for today. So anyway, your translation, and for the sides, the word is seas, right? The side that faces the sea. What are they trying to say? Westward. And for the sides on the west, the sides westward, it's an idiom. They use the word sea for west, just like they use the word sun for east. And for the sides westward, he made 6 boards. So remember, we're going from being told to make 6 boards to now they're actually making all this stuff. So now he has made 6 boards. Nothing real exciting there. Then in the next verse, in 28, is literally in English, and 2, this is the number 2, 2 boards made 2 corners, or for the corners, Mishkan in its sides. So you have Ushane, so there's your number 2, and 2, Kerashim. Now that's the same word we just had in plural. It's the board, it's a flat piece of wood. Asa, properly to labor, to work about, to make, to produce by labor, to manufacture, to fabricate. There's your word again. So he's going to make 2 more. He made the 6, and now you're going to make 2 more. Then it says, Lime kutzaot. Those are the corners. So now we need 2 boards for the corners, right? Then it says Ha-Mishkan, so we're still talking about the same tent. Vaya rehatayim, in its sides. That's the hinder part, the side, the back, the rear, and we're talking about the same thing. So your translation is, and he made 2 boards for the corners of the Mishkan in its sides. So it's the two corners on the side. So you're going to have one for the north and one for the south, because we're on the east wall here, but it's the two sides, which is the north and the south ends of that east wall. Hope I said that right. All right, verse 29, literally in English would be, and be they joined from to beneath, and together be they joined to head it, to the ring the one, so did to to, then the number two, or should we say for two, they, for two, the corners. Anyway, it's vehayu, so it's and be they, quite literally. So it's, and it came to pass, it came to exist, it's that sort of thing. Then it's toamim. So it came to pass that something was joined, to be twinned, doubled, used of planks and beams. They were joined together. Mile mata, from to beneath, quite literally. Downward, beneath, below. So at the bottom of the planks, they were joined together in some way. This is the yachdav, and together they. So it's the word that means union or junction or together. Properly, those joined together. So really, they're joined together at the bottom. But we say that at the bottom, they were joined together, to say it properly. Because in English, we say everything backwards. We say, I am going to the store, but every other language in the world says, to the store I am going. And here you have the same type of thing. Instead of saying, we would say, well, I'm not even sure we would say it this way, but it's the way it's supposed to be said is, from the bottom they were joined together, and we would probably say they were joined together at the bottom, right? So we say it backwards. They're saying it properly. Then it says you, which is a derivative of that same word we started with. It's to be, to exist, that sort of thing. Tamim, there's your word for joining, as in this case, joining the planks together. Then it says el, which is two. It's that idea of, I'm facing this way and I turn to you. It's a noun indicative of motion, which is hard to understand in English, but in Hebrew, since they don't actually have verbs and nouns, oh, yes, I do. My grammar teacher taught me. No, they don't. Nouns and verbs, both of those words are English. They're not Hebrew. Concepts are English, not Hebrew. In Hebrew, everything starts off as a noun. You could say it starts off as a verb and is converted to a noun, but it seems more like, to me, it's in biblical Hebrew, that it starts off as a noun and converts to a verb. But, just depends how you look at it, I suppose. Somebody's out there going, oh my God. It's just is what it is. Rosho. Rosh, that's head. And the O sound at the end is the added vav. So we say he, or the word it, it, it. So the head of it, the top of it, the beginning of it. And then it says L, which is that turning this way to that, to, T-O. Ha, ta, ba'ot. Tabaot, that's the ring, like I think I have on my finger. Only these are probably bigger than the one on my finger, just saying. But they use this of a seal, of a signet ring, that sort of thing. But it's anything that's round, basically, any kind of ring, like a nose ring for a cow, or even in their day, a nose ring for a girl, because they wore their rings in their nose, in the lower part. They didn't wear them here unless they were wanting to be a slave for the rest of their life. Very different world back then. Ha-echat, so it's the one. So it's the rings, the one, or maybe the first. This is Ken. It's not like Barbie and Ken, but it is pronounced Ken, which means thus or so. It says asa. So thus they did, or so they did. Remember, did, so they made. Properly to labor, to work about. It's the word asa, right? So, and here again, we're not being told to make it like we were in the previous chapters. Here we're being told that they actually are doing it at this point. Then it says, Li Shenehem. Well, that's the number 2. Really, I don't know how to say this to where it makes sense with you just hearing what I'm saying, but take the word T-O. That's the first part of this word. The next part is T-W-O, and then the last part is T-H-E-Y. To, they. So it's for both of them. Lishne, which should also be to, or for to. I think it's easier just to say for, F-O-R, for to. But maybe we'd have to add for the to. Maybe that would make more sense. Hamik zoot, for the 2 corners. Yeah, so we need to add the definite article for it to make sense in English. All right, so your translation, and they were joined together beneath, and they were joined together at the bottom. And they will be joined above. Its head to the one ring, thus he made, it says, the 2 they, or to they, both. It just means both. Thus he made both corners, where they are joined at the bottom, and they will be joined at the top. Just now putting that up together, so they haven't put the top on yet. That's all I'm saying. We compare that to chapter 26, verse 24, where it said, and they will be joined together beneath, or at the bottom, and they will be joined above. Its head to the ring, so the top of it will be joined with a ring. Thus it will be for both, to they, for both corners. So it's essentially the same thing. And just because they're a little bit different does not mean that there's some different thing here to be had. No, it's just that one's the way you say it when you're talking about what you're going to do, and one's the way you say it when you talk about what you have done. That's the only difference here. There aren't different bullet points. Don't go there. The Hebrew doesn't work that way. All right, so verse 30. And be they 8 boards, and bases there, silver 16, bases, the number 2 bases, the number 2 bases under the boards, the 1. It'll make some sense. Vahayu, it's to be, to exist, and they will be is how we would probably say it. Shemona. They will be 8. There will be 8. Maybe I should say it that way. That's not really the right word, but for us to understand it, maybe I should say it that way. There will be 8 kef rashim. We've already had that. 8 planks, 8 boards. Ve'adnehem. Trying to say the wrong word here. I'm trying to say Adonai. Don't know why. It kind of looks like Adonai in Hebrew. It's probably why. But it's ve'adnehem, which literally and bases there. So it's and their bases and their pedestal. That's what we're talking about as a pedestal. This is something that goes at the bottom that the boards are going to set on top of and fasten to, and then at the top there'll be a ring that holds the top together. So these are, think of them as pedestals because that's really what they are. Then it says kesef. Now remember, that's a Hebrew word for silver. They use it for money because money was originally made of silver, and to this day there are places where money is still silver. Not as much now as it used to, because for instance, in America, when the coins first started out that way, people started scraping the silver off from around the edges to keep the silver and giving the coins and getting the full value of the coin, even though some of the silver was missing, which is why they started putting the little indentions all the way around so that people would know if someone was still in the silver. Anyway. story I learned in grade school. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. That's why they said they did it. Then so we had silver. So it's going to be made of silver. Then it says shisha, which is either 6 or, in this case, something white. White marble. Byssus in Latin. So called from its whiteness, both that of the Egyptians and of the Hebrew priests. Oh, there you have it. We had the Egyptians were white and the Hebrews were white. I'm thinking they're talking probably about their robe. But anyway, it's the word for linen. That's what they're talking about. Linen was called shisha, shish, so, which is the same word for the number 6. They're spelled exactly the same way, too. So you have to keep that in mind. It's not a sound alike. It's just a different use for the word. So it says, this is not, I got this down wrong. I just looked at the next word, asar, which is teen. This is 16. This is not the word for linen. It's the word for 6. See, it'll throw you off every time. 16. This is adanim, which is bases or foundations, pedestals. Then it says shene, which is the word for 2, adanim, so 2 bases. Shene, adanim, 2 bases. So they're saying it twice. Tahat, which is under, something that is below. Hakeresh, that's the board, the plank. They are using 2 different words for boards and planks. Oh, so we got 2 different kinds, and one means this, and one means that, and one does this, and one does that. No, this is just a thing that the Jews do. To break up the monotony, they use different words for the same thing. In this case, because it's technical, it doesn't do the same thing that it would if it was using the same verb 2 times. If you're using the same verb 2 times, or even in sentences, it can still be the noun. It's not necessarily the rule of verb, but when it's not technical, when they're talking about so-and-so did this, or so-and-so is going to do that, or this happened or that happened, when they use different words that mean the same thing, it makes it more intense. It's what we would put an explanation point at the end of a sentence. Here in the technical terms, when they're using it 2 different ways, they're just trying to break up the monotony. That's all it amounts to. And we know this because of the work of Casuto, and he, of course, discovered that from his work with the Mesopotamian works that come from, we used to think prior to the time of the writing of the Hebrew Bible, but now archaeologists have basically proven beyond any doubt that the Hebrew Bible really does go all the way back to Mesopotamia. And these people came from Mesopotamia. So when they wrote, when Moshe, if it truly was him and him alone who wrote it, when he wrote it in the style of the Mesopotamian people, because that's where they were all from. They all came from that same place. And so the Ugaritic text, which is from Mesopotamia, is all but identical in its writing style to what the Christians call the Old Testament, what we call, of course, the Hebrew Bible. They're identical in every way grammatically, and in the style of telling the story as well. So they did the same thing. This is how we know, or how Casuto was able to prove that that's what I just told you was true. All right, so anyway, we have the boards, and this is ha'echad, which is the one, or same. You could even say same. All right, so your translation. And there were 8 boards and 16 silver holes. 2 holes under one. It says the one, but under the first one. And 2 holes under the boards of, it says the one, the other. So it's, you can say the first one and the other one, the one and the other, one and the other. You can say any way you want to. You're saying the same thing no matter how you do it. But in Hebrew, they say the one, the one. In English, that's a little off, so we say the one and the other, or the first and the second. You could even go there. I wouldn't really do it that way in this case, but you could, and it wouldn't necessarily be wrong. Actually, it wouldn't be wrong. So we can compare this, of course, to 26:25, where they were talking about the going to. Here they're saying that they did it. But it basically says the same thing. And there will be 8 boards and 16 silver holes, 2 holes under the one, and 2 holes under the boards of the one, or as we would say it, the other. And this is interesting. I want to point this out because I said it last time, and I don't have it in my notes here this time. But if you remember, I showed you the pictures of the Egyptian sarcophagus, and there were holes that had been drilled into it. And what they did was they drilled the holes on this side of it, and then the part that came down on the top of it had holes that were perfectly in line with the ones below. And then they stuck these little, what we would call wooden dowels in that hole, and it joined the two together. This is exactly what we're talking about, except that on the bottom piece, it has, the holes are, they've been covered in silver. And so whether they're drilled out, I don't know. Maybe they were, I mean, the wood, maybe they're made of wood, they're drilled out, and then they're filled with the silver, and maybe they drill the silver, you know, it's got to be covered in silver. So some way they had to find a way to carve out that silver so that they would be able to put these pegs in it. But the silver may have just been for looks, and then again, maybe it was to strengthen this. I can't imagine it being for strengthening because silver is not very strong. It's not a strong metal at all. So I think it's more for the looks than it is for the silver. But all they're saying is the holes will be inlaid with silver, just like the outer part of it's covered in silver. But anyway, we went over that in chapter 26. So if you've forgotten or you want to see the images again, go back to, it should be in 26. You should be able to see it there. All right, now verse 31. And he made bars, trees, shittim, 2 boards, or 4 boards, because I have a tendency, when a word starts with a Hebrew lamed, I have a tendency to write the word to, this to that. But it can also be for, this for that. In Hebrew, that's the same thing. Either word you use, it's the same thing. So it doesn't matter. In English, sometimes it's confusing to use the one word or the other. So I'm just throwing that out there, whichever helps you understand it. So for the boards, then it says side, mishkan, the one. So the first side, the one side as opposed to the other side. Va ya'as, and this is the asa, property to labor, to work about, anything to produce by labor, to manufacture, to fabricate. There's your word. So it's, and they made it. Beriche, they made bars. It's a crossbeam, a bar, which was passed from one side to the other through the rings of the several boards of the Holy Tabernacle. So they stood these boards up, and the boards had rings attached to them, and then they took a pole, for lack of a better word, and they ran that pole through the rings, and that's what held everything nice and straight and even, and probably tight as well. I mean, the ones that I've seen, the board is always real loose and all that, but it probably was a really tight fit as well. I'm just saying, I don't know. Nobody's ever seen a picture of it, so we don't know. You know, something drawn from that time period is what I mean by that. So you got these bars that go through these rings to hold all this stuff up. This is zeh, that's the word trees. So it's trees of shittim. Do you remember that? It's a large tree that grew in Egypt and Arabia, having the bark covered with black thorns. It was blackish, it had blackish pods. The wood is very hard, and when it grows old, it resembles ebony. So it's basically, it's black wood. And it's very hard wood. Why would that be important? Well, because it's not going to tend to warp, I would think, as often as others. And hardwood is hard to work with, but Man, you get some good stuff if you use that harder wood. Anyway, that's they cut all that down and made nice planks out of it, or in this case, the planks didn't actually have to be flat. All the pictures that you see, they're always flat, but they didn't have to be. They could have been round. You know, the word plank is an English word that was put to something a long time after the fact. They could have literally been round. But anyway, just throw that out there. Hamisha, that's 5. Le karche, the boards, the planks, whatever they are. Zelah, that's the side. It's the word for rib because it's on the side of a man. So these are the ribs of the building. Think about that. We even call, when somebody starts building a wood structure, we call the walls the ribs. We call that the skeleton because it resembles ribs, right? We still do that. Then it says Hamishkan, so that's this tent in the wilderness, this tabernacle. It's the fancy word for tent. Ha-echat, the one, the first, that sort of thing. So our translation, and he made bars of shittim wood, 5 for the boards on, it says the one, but we know it's the southern side of the Mishkan. So I have in the place of the words the one, I put the southern, because we know it's the southern side, right? So you've got these 5 posts, if you will, that go through those rings. I'm assuming that they're rings, so they're round, and I'm assuming the posts are going to be round as well. You're going to probably not going to put a flat 2x4 through all these round rings. You know what I'm saying? Just throwing that out there. All right, so we can compare that again to chapter 26, verse 26, where they were being told what to do. Here they've just done it. But so the other way of saying the same thing is, and you will make bars of shittim wood, 5 for the boards on, and I have again the southern side of the Mishkan. It did say, in fact, the one, but we know it's the southern side, so I put the southern side because it's basically being, the one is again being used idiomatic of the southern side. Of course, you can use that same one of any side, so it's not very exact. I'll give you that. All right, 32. And 5 bars to boards side Mishkan the second, and 5 bars to boards Mishkan 2 sides seas. It'll be the other side, right? V'chamisha, and 5. Ve'richim, so there's your word for bars again. Bars. Well, if you think about bars, they're round, right? Only these aren't going to be standing up and down. They're going long ways. Again, you can go back to chapter 26 and watch the video on that. If you recall, I gave you the images there that you can look at, so that might help. Anywho, our next word is the karche. So those are the boards, the planks. Zela, that's for the side. That's the word for rib. Hamishkan, for the ribs of the tent. Ha-shenit, the second, or the other side. Va-hamisha, the second 5. Be-richim, the second 5 bars. Second set of 5 bars. We would add the word set, but they didn't. They didn't need it. Le karche, so there's your word for boards or planks again. Hamishkan, that's the fancy word for. This isn't just a fancy word for tent. This is a very specific tent. This is the tent where the presence of God came and actually spoke to Moshe. You know what I'm saying? This was a very special tent. So instead of just calling it Ohel like they would call any other tent, and I'm not cussing, that is the Hebrew word for tent. Instead of calling it that, they call it the Mishkan, Ha-Mishkan, because it was a very special tent. Anyway, La Yarha Tayim, that's for the sides, the hinder part, in this case, Yama, so the side that faces the sea. So your translation, and 5 bars for the boards of the, and it said second, remember? But what did I do? I wrote the word northern. So we have the southern side. Now we're doing the northern side. 5 boards on the northern side of the Mishkan, and 5 bars for the boards on the westward, because it says seas, westward side of the Mishkan. So now we've got 3 sides taken care of. We can compare that to 2627, and 5 bars for the boards on the northern or second side of the Mishkan, and 5 bars for the boards on the seas or westward side of the Mishkan. So it says exactly the same thing. Verse 33, and he made the bars the midst to flee in midst the boards from the end to the end. All right, so you realize there's some idiomatic things going on here, right? Vaya'as, and he produced, he manufactured, he fabricated, right? Because in this moment, they're talking about what he did. It's a group of people doing this. It's not just one. So they get out and they're in the process of making this thing. And then it says et, which is an arrow pointing at something, and it's pointing at Abe-Rihe, the bars. This is the word for a crossbeam, a bar, which was passed from one side to the other through the rings of the several boards. Right, so we've already had this. Then it says ha-tihon, which is in the middle. So the rings are in the middle of the board. Now, it could be that the rings, say the boards are 2x6s. I'm just throwing that out there for simplicity. 3 inches in, boom, there's the center, right? If it was really 6 inches. And back in their day, 6 inches probably was 6 inches instead of in our day where 6 inches is really only 5.5. Anyone who's bought wood knows that a 2x4 is not 4 inches wide, it's 3.5 inches wide. You know what I mean? I don't know why they call it, they just round it up or something. I'm just saying it could be in the center and anywhere in the up and down, or maybe it's the center from the top to the bottom. It's not specific here, but it does say it's in the center. That's what they mean by midst or middle. Liv roach, that's the word that means to flee or for flee. It's to pass through, to reach across, to cut through, to break through, the sense of cutting, breaking, to flee away, to break away. So it's just saying they're made to pass through the rings. Betoch, this is the word for middle, the middle of a thing, so-called from its being divided, the middle part of a house, the interior court, those type of things. This is ha-kerashim, is your word for boards. Mean, it's a part taken from the whole. So if you took a pie and you cut a little piece out, you took a piece from the whole, right? That's even the image that they used to give in the dictionaries. That's followed by ha-ka-zeh. So it's from the end. This is the end. This is an extremity. It's the furthest part. This is el, which is that word of turning, noun indicative of motion. It's to, so it's end to ha-ka-zeh. End to end. It's from one end to the other. All right, so our translation. And he made the bars in the middle to run in the middle of the boards from one end to the other. It says the end to the end, from one end to the other. So from 26:28, it says, and you will cause the bar in the middle of the boards to reach from one end to the other. They're identical again. In verse 34, it says, and then it has the pointer, the boards overlay gold, and there's another pointer in Hebrew, rings did gold or made gold, houses, 4 bars, and it overlay the bars gold. So now these wooden bars are going to get real fancy. So it's ve'et, so it's and it's going to point to something. Ha-ke-rashim, y'all have that word memorized yet? It's board or plank. Well, it's in plural though. zipa. So you're going to overlay these boards. Going to overlay them. You're going to cover them over with zahav, gold, zahav, gold. Going to make them shiny and pretty. Then it says ve'et, and it's pointing to tabe'otam, the rings. So it says asa. So now they're actually doing what they've been told to do. They're making it. They're manufacturing it. They're producing it. Zahav. So it's gold again. Batim. And that's houses. It's a house, a movable house, a tent, royal house, blah, blah, blah. It's that sort of thing. So the houses. La berihi. It's the housings of the bars. That's your word for bars or crossbeam. So the housings for these bars, right, are covered with gold. The zaf, overlay them, cover them with the gold. Et, so it's pointing at something. Ha be rihim, so there's your words for the bars. Zahav, and so you're going to overlay the bars. All right, so our translation, and he overlaid the bars with gold, and he made their rings housing for the bars, and he overlaid the bars with gold. Now in the 26:29, and you shall overlay the boards with gold, and you will make their rings of gold for housings for the bars, and you will overlay the bars with gold. So this one said fairly different, but again, there are no talking points here. One is telling you you're going to do it, and the other one is telling you that they actually did it. All right. 35. And he made, and there's an arrow, the curtain violet and purple and scarlet, crimson and linen from twisted, made, imagination made, arrow it, keruvim. And we're going to keep that word. I'll tell you what it means sooner or later. Vaya'as, so and he made and he created. So it's truly not just one person. And they made is how we would say it. Et, which points at haporochet, the curtain, the veils. Now, this is not the veil that goes over the temple or over the Holy of Holies. It does most likely include that, but these are the, what makes it a tent. This is the wall, the curtains that go around the walls, the curtains that go on the outside, the curtains that go on the inside. This is all of them. The curtains that go at the door, the curtains that go at the gate. So he's made all of these techelet. We say violet. The truth is, there's a couple of things here that we need to know, and I don't remember if I've said this, but we don't know what these colors are. We do know that if, in fact, techelet back then is connected to what we know as the muscle of the Mediterranean Sea of today, then we know that this is a blue color and not a violet color. But the word violet is the one that comes up as the most used for this word. I don't know why. It's not violet, it's blue. And it's not even a cobalt blue like they said in the 1800s. Of course, in the 1800s, no one had seen this mussel. They thought it had gone extinct. And then not too terribly long ago, they just made a huge comeback. So now we know that the color is actually a blue, and it's not a very dark blue on top of that. But anyway, violet's the word I stuck with because it's traditionally the word we use. But we don't know what any of these colors are because we're making connections thousands of years after the fact. Thousands. So the truth is we don't know what any of these colors were. We can be fairly sure that it's blues and purples, and reds. And when it comes to, for instance, the stones that were on the ephod, there isn't a single stone out there that doesn't come in every single color. There are even, every stone out there, let's say topaz. It comes in a clear color just like a diamond. How they know which one's which, I don't know. But I do know that they come in every color. So to say that, well, it was this because it was red, and well, it was this because it was black, and well, it was that because it was green, doesn't work. Because the truth is, we only got the color, we don't know the stone. We just don't know. There's people that run around telling you that, yeah, we do, I know it is, what it is, because they've decided what they want it to be, and that's what they go with, or they're going with something that was written in the Dark Ages, and now you can find in the Talmud, as if those people would have known. They didn't know any better than we do. In fact, we probably know more than they did because of all the archaeological digs that have gone on since then. But until somebody actually finds the actual ephod and can look at the stones, we don't know. And that happening is just pretty much not going to happen, because when the temple was ransacked, there's very little doubt that somebody didn't pop those stones out. Just throwing that out there. So then our next color, the argaman, I have purple. They said purple, reddish purple, which is almost all these colors are going to wind up being a reddish purple somehow. Betolaat, and that's scarlet. Well, isn't that kind of a reddish color? But that's the word that's connected to a worm that makes a kind of a blood red color. Wouldn't we call that crimson? Anyway, this is shani, which is crimson, they say. It's a deep scarlet produced by certain insects, and we don't know that that's what they were produced by back then. We only know that that's what they were produced by in the 1800s. That's all we really know. Veshesh, which is either N6 or it's the word for linen. So since the next word is mashazar, which means finely twined or finely twisted, we can bet that the word previous is linen and not the number 6. Dawn and I went out last weekend, and we actually ran into it. We went to a little thing down the road in another town. We actually saw a man take animal hair and turn it into, I guess you call that twine, right? Yarn. And he was showing us this little object he had, and he'd put that stuff in there and he'd spin it around. And I asked him, well, how far back in time does that particular implement go? And he said they had found them in the tombs of the pharaohs. So this is proper for the time. And the Bible calls the people who spun this stuff, they call them spinners. Well, this is exactly what he did. It was just, I don't even know how to describe it, but kind of just a round block of wood. They had he said in one case, in one of the tombs, it was just a stick that had been run through a potato. And they stick this stuff on there and they just spin it. It spins real fast, and it takes that stuff and just makes a thread out of it. And then he showed us how they turned the thread into material. It was fascinating. I asked him if he had any videos that we could watch, but he didn't, unfortunately. You guys would have been blown away by it. Everything he said was just so in line with the description of how this tent was put together. But the main thing that stuck out to me was he was talking about the sheep and goats. If their fleece, is that what you call it, Donna?
Yeah.
If it got wet, it would weigh so much that, it would just weigh them down. It's probably why they won't get into the water to get a drink, because if they fall in, they won't be able to get out, right? It's very heavy if it gets wet. But the animals secrete this stuff onto their fur that makes their fur waterproof. Lanolin. They secrete lanolin and it makes it waterproof. So I said, now, wait a minute. You said you wash this stuff, but if you wash it, won't it take the waterproof off? And he said there was another name for it. He said it's a half wash. They don't go all the way and try to get all of it out if they want to leave it waterproof. Isn't it interesting that they're using the very animal that secretes this, you say lanolin? Lanolin onto its fur. They don't clean it all the way so that it remains waterproof, and that's what the most outer part of the tent was made from. I wish you guys could have been there. It was really something to behold. Anyway, so the next word is ma'aseh, asa. It's a noun of action. That ma'as should be asa. That which anyone makes or does, a deed, an action. I wonder why this has a different translation. I mean, a different meaning. Essentially, it's the same thing, though. We're making something. Asa. That is definitely asa. I'm not sure why that has a different meaning. That may be a mistake, or I'm looking at it and reading the Hebrew wrong. Anyway, says the next word is Hoshev, which is devise, to meditate, to think. The primary idea seems to be that of computing and reckoning, to think out. But the main thing is it's to invent, to compose as a song, to create something from your mind. And then we have the word asa, which is properly to labor, to work about anything. Let's see, that's a 13. This one. Yeah, this ma'aseh is not asa. It's the noun of action that comes from the verb asa, which is why I see the word asa in it. Yeah, see, it's just asa with a mem in front of it. I don't quite get that. So anyway, either way you look at it, they're producing, they're manufacturing. But maybe they're using a different word because this is a creative process. What they're creating by hand is coming from their mind. Then it says ota, which is it's et. It's it's a pointer. This is keruvim. You guys maybe know it as cherub, which is always funny because when you read the King James version of the Bible, I've never looked to see in the Jewish Bible if they made the same mistake, but probably not. But in the King James, it says the cherubims in one place. Well, cherubim is plural. So it's what, cherubimses? The plural of a plural. Anyway, this is the plural of cheruvim or keruvim, and it's a creature with 4 faces: the face of a man, of a lion, of an eagle, and the face of an ox. With 4 sets of wings, and the body of a man, but feet like the hooves of an ox. You're like, oh, Rob, you made that up. No, it's in Ezra chapter 1. Just go look for yourselves. Anyway, so verse 36, 35. And he made the curtain of violet, purple, scarlet, and crimson, and from fine linen. The work keruvim made from imagination. So what they're saying is, and I have a bit of a visual for you here. This here's my cat grooving. So I turned it. There you go. They made a material with something sewn into it, just like this, right? So for those of you who think I'm committing a sin, well, you got a problem because Moshe committed a sin too. If what I'm doing is a sin, right? This is not a 3-dimensional image. This is an image that has been sewn into, in a 1-dimensional way, into a 1-dimensional piece of cloth. It does stick out a little bit, because it's sewn in. This is exactly what they're talking about. So on these curtains that hung on the inside, there were the pictures of this being that had the 4 faces and all that kind of stuff. So, and that came from their imagination because none of them had ever seen one, right? Because Ezra sees one way after this happens. So no, at this point, no one's seen one. It's possible that Moshe did, because it says that God showed Moshe stuff. So Moshe probably could have given them the basic idea, but it still came from the imagination of a man. So in chapter 26, verse 31, where they were talking about making this thing, it said, and you will make a curtain from violet, purple, scarlet, and crimson, and from fine linen, and kerubim made from imagination. So the verses are identical. All right. Yes, if we can stack in these last few. Verse 36, and he made for her, and he made for her 4 columns, shittim, and he overlaid gold and hooks their gold, and he poured for them 4 bases of silver. So now it's a little clearer. The bases of silver were poured. They were not made of wood and then covered. They were poured. That's what it says right now. So now we know for sure. Vaya'as, and it came to pass. It came to exist. And oh no, it's not this. What am I saying? That's weird. Man, I'm just out there today. It's saying the word asa, which is to labor, to work about. So it's not that it came to be, it's that they actually made la, which means for her, and the her here being the tent, arba'ah, that's 4. So they made for the tent, for it. It's just it in feminine, for it, the number 4. 4 amudei, 4 columns, 4 pillars. Used to pillars of cloud, pillars of fire, pillars of the tabernacle. Shittim. So the 4 pillars are made out of the shittim wood. That's that large ebony-colored trees. Then it says Vayet Zapim, and he overlaid it. It's what you think of. This is to overlay Zahab. So they overlaid it, the 4 pillars, with gold. Va'vehem, and the hooks that go to the pillars, they were overlaid with Zahab, with gold. Vayizok, and he poured, to pour out liquids. It's to cast metal, such as brass, or in this case, silver. Lahem, for them, arba'ah, 4 adnei, 4 pedestals. Chasef, so 4 pedestals of silver. This one's really straightforward. And he made for it, again, the temple, the tabernacle being the it. And he made for it 4 columns of shittim, and he overlaid with gold, and overlaid it with gold, and their hooks with gold, and he poured for them, and for them he poured 4 holes of silver. So in 26:32, it said, and you will put on 4 columns of shittim wood, overlaid with gold, their hooks of gold, on 4 should be pedestals of silver. All right, so 36:37 is, and he made covering to entrance the tent, violet and purple and scarlet, crimson and linen from twisted, so it's fine linen, did needlework. So so and he made, he produced, he labored, he manufactured, blah blah blah. Masach, he made coverings. He made a covering. He made a veil. They use this word for the gate itself because it was made out of material. It was framed out with something, but the inner part was material. So it made a covering. Le fetach. So this is the entrance, to the entrance, in this case, of the temple itself, the tabernacle. Ha-ohel. So now, instead of calling it the Mishkan, because we're talking technically here, they use ohel. So you just have to kind of keep that in mind when they're being technical and talking about what's being made and how long it is and what it's made of. They tend to say, "Oh hell," for tent. But when they are moving into more spiritual mode, they use Mishkan. It's really kind of being thrown back and forth here. It's not a really good rule of thumb, but think of it that way. It'll help, I guess. It's what Kasuto said. So anyway, we're talking about the Mishkan, but they called it the tent. Tehelet, so there's your word for, and again, that's the one that's blue that we say is violet. Then it's ve'argaman, so there's your word for, and purple. Vetolaat, there's your word for scarlet. Shani, there's your word for crimson. Veshesh, which again can be linen, or in this case, it could be 6, is what I meant to say, or in this case, linen, because it's followed by the word mashazar. Not Shazam, Shazar. So that's twisted. It's the twisted thread, the linen. So then it says ma'asa. That's that word that comes from asa. So it's to work, to labor, to manufacture. Rokem. So it was manufactured, or it was made, or it was created from needlework. So it's especially to variegate a garment, to weave it of various colored threads. Now, is the weaving what that guy showed us on that board where?
Shuttlecock and went through, yeah, and lifted up the strings and then pushed the shuttle through and then tightened it down.
Yeah, so they're running the string through the thing, but they had a machine that actually lifted the strings were intertwined and they were pulled apart so that you just ran it through straight instead of having to do this through every single thread. They lift them up every other one, and then you just run it straight through. When you drop it down, it's like that. It's how they do the needlework. All right, so your translation. And he made coverings for the entrance of the tent of violet, purple, scarlet, and crimson, a needlework made from fine linen. In 26:36, it says, and you will make a covering for the entrance of the tent of violet, purple, violet, purple, scarlet, and crimson, a needlework made from fine linen. It's the same thing. All right, so 38. Now, dude, this is our last one, right? Oh, I'm going to push it in there as best I can. And it starts off with and. It has the pointer. Pillars, it's pillars, but they say pillars, it's 5. And 5 pillars. This is and, has the pointer, and hooks there, and overlay heads or tops of them, and clasp they gold, and bases there 5 silver. So we basically already had this. Ve'et, and then it points to something. Amudive. Now this is another word for columns or pillars, because that's the same word, isn't it? Yeah, we're using the same word, because the pillar of fire, the pillar of cloud, the pillar of the tent. Yeah, so we are using the same word. Hamisha, which is 5. Ve'et, and it points to va vehem, and hooks, pegs, a nail, a hook. So this is your actual Hebrew word vav in plural. So it's a hook. Ve'zipah. So, and he overlaid rashechem, the tops of them, the upper part, vahashukehem, and their clasps, the things that joined them together. Zahav, so it's all the tops and the clasp are all covered with gold. The adnehem, and the pedestals. Hamisha, so there's 5 pedestals here to go with the 5 columns. Nechoshet, the 5 pedestals in this case are made out of brass. I forgot that was going to make all that noise. Sorry about that. 5 of brass. So our translation, and 5 pillars and their hooks, and overlay their tops and clasp with gold, and their 5 holes with brass. So when you compare that to 2637, and you will make a covering with 5 pillars of shittim, and overlay them with gold, and their hooks of gold, and you will pour out 5 holes of brass for them. So this one says 5 pillars and their hooks. It doesn't say pillars of shittim. So it's not 5 that were made without the shittim wood and 5 that were made with it. It's just that you already knew what the wood was. They didn't feel obligated to tell you a second time something that you should already know. There's no secret of the universe here. I do apologize for those of you who wanted one. Anyway, this concludes our walk through chapter 36. Shalom and shalom, y'all.